Well, the New York Mets have made the biggest splash as far as the seller's concerned on the trade deadline so far. Is more in store? Hello, I'm Jeff Carr, channel manager for Locked On MLB, and alongside me is Ryan Finkelstein, host of Locked On Mets, where it's your New York Mets every single day. And the New York Mets started by trading their closer in division, and then they decided to trade Max Scherzer as well. It's not quite been the year that everybody expected for the New York Mets, and they are pivoting a little bit here now with this Max Scherzer deal, sending him to the Texas Rangers, getting back Luisangel Acuna, brother of Ronald Acuna. Going to be an interesting one there if he makes it to the major leagues, have a sibling rivalry in the NL East. But what was your initial reaction, Ryan, to this trade when it went down?
I can't believe it wasn't Justin Verlander. That was my initial reaction, where there started to be rumblings about Max Scherzer. I think we kind of expected one of them to go, but I thought that Verlander was the one that was going to have enough trade value to get it done. Max Scherzer this year has given up a lot of home runs, hasn't looked great, has pitched to an ERA over 4. I didn't know he'd have this type of value. Now, granted, the Mets sent $35 million in this trade, so they essentially buy a prospect for $35 million. But it was a crazy deal, and now the Mets are sitting in the position with Verlander where they could deal him. They got the leverage to do so, or they can hold him, and I kind of want them to because I'd like them to still have some pitching the next couple of years.
I was gonna say, is this like a situation where the Mets will be able to reload quickly through their own system with pitching coming up to the major leagues, or is this something that just kind of creates a hole that you now look to the off season to be something that they fill it?
I think it's more the latter there. Now, I will say the Mets have been working overtime to get pitching. They drafted a ton of pitchers, a lot of college arms this year. They've had a couple of guys rise to their system. Christian Scott, Mike Vassell have had some big years and could be in the mix next year, but that's not an ace. And this Mets team wants to contend big time in 2024. They need frontline starters. That's why I wonder what they do with Verlander, because if they trade him to have to fill 2 holes next year, that's going to be more tough. And I really think that puts them in this position where, hey, if you want to give that Godfather offer of prospects, they might listen. I still don't know if they're going to. I think if they were seriously going to trade Justin Verlander, I don't know if he starts the game today, and he did pitch, this afternoon.
Where do you see Luis Angel Acuna fitting into the future of this Mets team?
Well, right now, I'd say for one, he's the top prospect in the system. You can get that in any trade at the deadline. You love it. It's interesting because I think for teams that had an open roster, shortstop would probably be where he'd play. Center field, he's got some time. The Mets have Lindor and Nimmo, so I don't see those positions. I imagine second base is likely the home for him. Jeff McNeil's looked great in the corner outfield spot this year, so I could see McNeil shifting out, maybe playing right field next year. That leads some question, I guess. We'll see what happens with Starling Marte as well, but I think second base is my guess right now.
Did the quickness and really the vastness of the two players that they dealt so far surprise you at how much the Mets are just going into that seller's mentality?
Not necessarily. I at this point I figured David Robinson was going to be gone. Right? It's a rental reliever. You don't have a great shot this year. You might as well move him, get some value back. And I think they did well in that trade. Tommy Pham, Mark Hanna, rentals as well. So I figured those guys would move. Again, I was anticipating maybe Scherzer or Verlander, but the fact that it was Scherzer is what shocked me more than anything. I did know he'd have this kind of value, and then a team would really want Max Scherzer this much to send a prospect like Acuna in a deal like this, and how quickly it came together too, where Scherzer makes a start and he's saying, I need to have a conversation with the front office a couple days ago about what the direction is of this team. And the next day, he's in trade talks and getting moved. So it's been a fascinating development, and the Mets are clearly a team to watch over the next 48 hours here, 72 hours before the deadline.
Who's next?
I think Pham, but I would not be surprised if we're hearing some rumblings on Verlander until it does. I think that's the shoe everyone's waiting to see if it drops, if they actually decide to trade Verlander. And if they do, they're going to have their work cut out for them in the offseason. But my guess would be Tommy Pham is traded because I would be shocked if they didn't move him. Verlander, I don't know. I'm kind of at a coin flip at this point.
And final question here, is this something that, with the way that the season has played out and now with them selling at the trade deadline, do you expect Steve Cohen to continue to pay for different rosters like this in seasons to come?
I think so. I mean, look, even with the Scherzer trade, because they're still eating money on that contract next year, the payroll is already at that point where if they're not still over the luxury tax, by the time everyone gets through arbitration, they're going to be over it already before they even make moves. And as Steve Cohen has said in the past, if you're going to be a luxury tax team, blow past it. The crazy part about this trade, I haven't gotten a chance because I was on a little trip to read the full article from Ken Rosenthal at The Athletic, but apparently the Mets saved money on this trade, and according to what I've read off of Twitter, it seems like they saved $59 million on this trade while eating $35 million. And the reason being is they are so far into that tax. I know it's some crazy math, but basically because of the money they save on payroll from not paying Scherzer and how much more that would have been taxed, in a way they save money. In reality, it'll be reinvested into the team. It won't really matter. But it's just the crazy wonky math that you get into when Steve Cohen is spending, $350 million on his payroll every season.
Leave it to Steve Cohen to figure out how to spend money to save money. Make sure that you follow along with Ryan Finkelstein every single day. Locked On Mets will have you covered as they move through the rest of this trade deadline and what happens as they get close to the offseason, where I'm sure Steve Cohen is ready to reload. Ryan, thanks.
Thank you.